I had someone on YouTube yesterday tell me that I was going to put speech language pathologists out of business because of this R strategy that I showed on my YouTube shorts. I promise you, if it was that easy, we would not have a profession in the first place. But today we're going to be sharing a whole bunch of different R strategies, 15 in fact, 15 different ways that you can teach the R sound. Because let's be honest, the R sound has got to be the hardest sound to teach a child to make. So I am sharing all of the tips today. I have done a complete roundup and I'm going to share those with you today. And I promise it will not put our profession out of business, but hopefully it will help you with your tricky R students or clients. All right. So I am Carrie Clark, speech language pathologist. I am the owner of Speech and Language Kids and the creator of the SLK curriculum, a complete program for speech and language therapy. And this podcast is all about sharing real strategies from the ground that are working with real clients. And if you like this information, if this is helpful to you, I recommend that you subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you're on. That'll make sure you don't miss any of my episodes as they come out. We do have a kind of deal going on next week. I'm going to just tease that, but not tell you what it is. So you'll want to make sure that you have notifications turned on so that you don't miss that. But also, if you have a chance to leave a review, that really helps me out to spread the word and make sure we can reach the people that need to be reached, because I know there are a lot of you out there struggling with these ideas, these topics, these strategies, and in particular R, because the R videos I've been making on YouTube and Instagram are doing really well. Everybody needs R. So I went through the research, I dug through the internet, I looked up as many strategies as I could find to help teach the R sound. And here's the reason why. So to illustrate this point, I have a client who is 5th grade. He has been working on R for years. I just came to him. He's a new client to me. And so I just have started working with him within the last month. And he said, "Oh, I've got a really good R. Listen, R." And that was it. That was his good R. And I was like, "Oh, sweet baby." We are not there. And so we started working on some just elicitation strategies. And the thing about R is it's so hard to explain where their tongue needs to be. And we did find a strategy that actually worked really, really well for him. It was an immediate, beautiful R. And his exact words were, "Oh, so it's just like an L, but farther back in the mouth." If somebody would have just told me that from the beginning, I would have got this a long time ago. And he said, "Why didn't I do this the whole time?" And I said, "Well, because there's a lot of different strategies and we had to keep working through them until we found the one that worked for you." So poor buddy, he actually is doing really well though. It's been, like I said, about a month that I've been working with him, and he already has a beautiful R in some single words, and his awareness of when it's good and when it's not is amazing. So these strategies work, but the problem with R is that the same strategy doesn't work for every child. So what you really need in order to teach a child to say the R sound correctly is a whole bunch of different tricks, a whole bunch of different strategies. We're basically tricking their mouth and their brain into saying R a different way. And then once we find it, we provide that really amazing feedback. We go, that one right there, freeze. We figure out what they're doing. We figure out the cues that help them keep doing it. And then we gradually expand that out from this one very specific context where they can do it, the one very specific trick, to being able to, like my client, my 5th grader, being able to do it in other contexts, in other words, in being able to expand that. Okay, so I'm going to give you all the strategies. I have 15 to share with you today. There are probably more, so if you have one that I don't mention, put it in the comments so other people can see it too, because you've probably figured out things that work for some clients as well. All right, so the first one I'm going to give you is the one that worked with this friend. And this is one that I think feels weird when I do it. So I did not expect it to actually be an effective strategy. I think this is Pam Marshala. Don't quote me on this, but several of the strategies that I pulled are from Pam Marshala's work. And I think this is one of them. Somebody else on Instagram confirmed. So I do think that's true. But this is where you're going to start with the L sound, okay? So you have them go la, 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 just a nice, easy L. And you describe it as tapping the L because you're tapping the tip of the tongue against the spot on the roof of the mouth right behind the front teeth. And so key with all of these is just an awareness of what is going on inside your mouth. So we start with the L, we have them feel it. Do you feel how the tip of your tongue is tapping right there? Okay, great. So now what we're going to have them do is we're going to have them tap the L sound and keep tapping it. But every time they tap the roof of their mouth, we prompt them to tap just a little bit farther backward on the roof of the mouth. And so it's la, 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 la. Okay, you can feel how it, or you can hear how it's starting to move backwards. And then we just go, keep going farther, farther, farther. And I have had some clients that go, I will not do this. This is too weird, too silly. I don't like it. But the ones that will do it, if we get it far enough, listen, la, 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 la. Do you hear the R at the end there? And that's without me doing any shaping of my lips or anything. So we're just pulling the tongue back. And what that does is it curls the tongue backwards into the retroflexed R. So if you are new to R, there are two different types of R. The retroflexed, which is where the tongue tip curls backward, and the bunched, which is where the back of the tongue pulls back and the tongue tip lowers to make that. Basically, we need the tongue to go back towards the back and we need it to get tight. That's what the kind of two main ingredients to R are. And so if we can get them to pull that tongue back and add some tension, then we can usually get a good R. I don't have a citation for this, so don't quote me on this part, but I was listening to a continuing ed course and they said that they have done imaging of the tongue whilst people are saying R, and it's a whole bunch of different people, and they discovered that there are different positions within the mouth for saying R, like all the way up and down. It's there, we used to say, oh, there's two different ways. There turns out there's a ton of different ways to make that R sound. But that key is having tension and pulling it back in some capacity. Okay, so the tapping the L, they're tapping, they're pulling the tongue tip back, and that ends up with a kind of sound. Yes, it kind of sounds a little like they're swallowing their tongue, especially at first, but we just need them to feel that, to feel getting it back there. And then as they get more comfortable with that, as they have repeated that sound enough time and their brain starts to go, oh, okay, I see what I'm doing here. It starts to sound more natural. It starts to sound lighter, and they can do it more quickly. Okay, so the key is just to get that tongue in the right position at first, and then we shape it into a more natural R as we go along. Okay, so don't get hung up on perfection right at the beginning. We're just trying to get them to start to feel it, to start to get it in the right spot. Okay, I was going to say something else about that, but I lost it, so we're going to keep moving. Okay, so that's the first strategy, tap the L and pull it backwards each time. The second strategy is similar but different, and that is starting with an L and just sliding it back. So if the tapping doesn't work, you can start with the L, and you can pull the tongue backward. Okay, so that's another strategy, is to slide it instead of tap it. That's number 2. Number 3 is similar again, but we're starting with a Z sound. So we're going to start with Z, and then we're going to pull that back, pull the tongue back. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. The key here is to not call these R's at the beginning, okay? If you say, start with your L and then turn it into an R, they're going to immediately flip that back into however they say R, because their brain has associated R with their production, right? Because yeah, they've been doing it a long time that way. So when you are doing any of these strategies, do not call it an R right away. So you start with the L and you say, okay, we're going to tap it. We're going to just pull it back. And when I was working with my 5th grader, he's very, very aware. And he goes, oh, is that going to make an R sound? I said, we're just playing with the tongue right now. We're just going to see what sounds we can make. And so he did the L and he pulled it back, and it was a beautiful, beautiful R. And I played it real cool because, right, as soon as you say R, then they go, oh, and they switch it back. So I said, interesting. Let's try it again, because I just wanted him to try it a couple times. And he goes, that kind of sounded like an aw. I was like, I know, it did. Let's keep trying. And so we kept doing it. And then after he had done it enough times that I figured he could repeat it, I said, that's the R sound. You're making the R sound by doing this exercise. And so sure enough, he tried it again, but made his R. And I said, oh, no, we lost it. We have to start back at the L. So for the first couple weeks, we were just tapping L and pulling it back, tapping L, pulling it back, tapping L, pulling it back. And that was probably 2 or 3 weeks of therapy. And then this last session when I saw him, I said, how are those R's going? And he goes, rah. And I said, you did it, just right off the bat. And so now he can do it without the L. And now he's working on getting run and rock. He still has to think really hard about it, but it sounds good and he's getting the right position. So now we just have to make it more natural and more automatic for him. Okay, so 1 was tapping L, 2 was sliding L, 3 is sliding Z, back to an R. Okay, strategy number 4. So this one is, we're going to start with the E sound. Okay, so the E sound is produced with the sides of the tongue pushed against the upper back teeth, the upper molars. So you can do it right now. E. And you can feel that the sides of your tongue are kind of stuck up against your top teeth. That is the same tongue position we want for R, but we want to pull it back and we want to make it tighter. And so we start with E and we say, okay, do you feel how the sides of your tongue are against your top teeth? Say, now we're just going to pull the tongue straight back, but you're going to keep the sides of the tongue on the teeth, just like a train on a train tracks. Okay, so imagine that your teeth are the train tracks, your tongue is the train, just back that train up. Keep that contact on the top teeth while you pull your tongue back, and then ear kind of turns into a bit of an R. Remember, we're just trying to get it back there for now, and then we'll shape it. All right, so that's number 4. Number 5 then is kind of building on this, and that is tactile cues. So if a child is not really aware of what's happening inside their mouth, then a lot of these cues are going to be harder, because when you say, do you feel how the sides of your tongue are touching your teeth? They may not actually feel that. So we can help by giving them tactile cues on their actual tongue. And I like to do this with a lollipop because it's, in addition to the tactile, it's also a flavor kind of thing. And also, lollipops are fun. So that makes this way more enjoyable and less stressful for the client. So I will give them a lollipop and I will show them, we'll use mirrors and I'll say, okay, stick your tongue out. We're going to rub the sides of our tongue with a lollipop and we'll do that. And I'll say, okay, do you feel where that flavor is? You feel that spot? Now say E. Okay. And then I say, do you feel how the flavor spot is touching those teeth? And they're much more aware of what's happening when they have had that tactile cue first. Okay. Another one we can do, if you're trying to get them to lift the tip of their tongue and curl it back, but they don't know where the tip of their tongue is, you can use the lollipop, have them rub the tip of their tongue and say, okay, do you feel where that flavor spot is? I want you to pull that lift it up off the bottom of your mouth, curl it back, or pull it back towards your throat. So by using the lollipop, you can also use like flavored tongue depressors, but just giving them some sort of tactile cue of, hey, here's the front of your tongue, here's the side of your tongue. That can help as we're giving these prompts. All right, so that's number 5. Number 6 then is visual cues. So as opposed to tactile cues where we're touching, it can also be really helpful to give them visual cues so they can understand what's happening, okay? So we want to talk about, what are all those pieces inside our mouth? What are lips? What is a tongue? What are teeth? Obviously, that seems pretty basic. But if I say your tongue should be touching your teeth and you're not that you don't know what those words mean, but that you're not aware of where they are, that can be hard. So we can show them pictures of mouths. There are the mouth puppets. If you haven't seen those, there's I think it's called the Mighty Mouth is the one from Super Duper, the Jumbo Mighty Mouth. And it is literally just teeth and a tongue and it's a puppet and it's weird. But we can use that to show them, hey, here's the sides of the tongue. Here's what I want your tongue to do. Because it's so much easier to see on the puppet than it is to see in my mouth or in their own mouth looking in a mirror. Although looking in a mirror is also really, really good because they become aware of what they're doing. It's an instant biofeedback, okay? So mirrors, visual aids like the mouth puppet or like just a picture of a mouth. You can do it with your hand. So if you put your hand palm up and curl your fingertips up, you can imagine that's the tongue and the tip of the tongue is curling back. Or if you put your hand palm down and you kind of bunch your hand in the middle, you can imagine pulling the back of the tongue back and bunching it up, and that creates that the bunched R sound as well. So you can use your hand as a cue. Another one I see it done a lot is Play-Doh. So you get some Play-Doh out and you actually make like a little tongue, and then you say, okay, let's curl the front up. That's what we want your tongue to do. Or let's bunch the back up, and that's what we want you to do. So visual cues, all kinds of visual cues. You can do that. All right, next strategy, number 7, is to start with an ah and then have them curl their tongue back to get the R. So R. And they're going to have to close the jaw a little bit, pull that tongue back. Okay, so that's another one, especially if you're trying to get a vocalic R. That's a good one to try. Similarly to that one, my friend who can now do his R, he can do just that. I wanted to kind of work towards a vocalic R, and so I had him say R. And so he kind of just put an first, and then that gives us the opportunity to practice a medial R. All right, number 8. So this one, if you are having trouble getting the mid-tongue tension. So the middle of the tongue has to be tight. We basically have to flex the muscle of the tongue in order to get the tension to make the R. Now, ideally, we would like that tension to be pushing out against the sides of the teeth like we did with the E. But sometimes they are kind of have like a floppy tongue in there. And so they're, and it doesn't feel tight. And so one way that I have seen to try to get the mid-tongue tension is you're going to take 2 tongue depressors. If you want to do flavored ones, that's even better. And you're going to stick those one on either side of the tongue. So I would let the child do this because then they can control how far back it goes. But they're basically going to hold the 2 tongue depressors parallel, put it inside the mouth so that they are basically have one on each side of the tongue, and then encourage them to push their tongue outward against the tongue depressors. So it's basically the same thing as the teeth. Remember the railroad track with the teeth, but you're using the sticks to provide extra feedback because they may not, again, be super aware of where their teeth are. The sticks are hard to ignore. When you have 2 sticks shoved inside your mouth, you're going to feel that. And so the idea is just, okay, put those in there, have the child push with the side of the tongue against the sticks. You can have them try to make an R if you want. It's going to be hard because their mouth is open wider because of the sticks. But you can just also use this as a tactile. Okay, this is what it feels like to push against the sticks. And then immediately take out the sticks and have them do the same motion pushing against their teeth to get that tension. And then we shape that into that R. Okay, so that's another one. All right. My 9th strategy on my list is oral motor exercises. And before you turn off this podcast, take a breath. I know that non-speech oral motor exercises have gotten a bad rap, but here's the deal. I'm not encouraging you to simply have them do these exercises 5 times a day and that's it. That's all we're doing, and that's somehow going to magically fix speech. That is where the conflict over non-speech oral motor exercises comes in, is when we're just doing exercises with our tongue, thinking that that's going to somehow change their speech. And it doesn't. We know that our brains, the part that controls speech, is different than the part that controls oral motor movements. But come with me on this journey. If we go back to this idea that these children are not aware of what's happening inside their mouth, then they're not able to follow the directions we're giving them to put their tongue in the right place. So sometimes we do need to do some exercises to help them figure out how to move their tongue and jaw and lips so that we can get those parts into the right place, and then we can make the sounds. So as long as we are focusing on immediately moving from these non-speech oral motor exercises in translating that into speech sounds, it's okay. We are allowed to talk about moving their articulators. I think sometimes we get so, like the research was so heavily debated for a while there that sometimes we shy away from that. And what I'm telling you right now is it is totally okay to do this. Okay, so the one that I'm specifically thinking of, I had one of my friends who I was like trying to get him to do, the L back to the R, trying to pull his tongue back, and nothing that I was trying was getting him to actually pull his tongue back. He's like, it is back. It's back. It's all the way back. I'm like, it is really not. It is all the way forward and I can see it. And so we just started doing some oral motor exercises. I said, we're just going to practice doing some tongue exercises. And so we did tongue wags back and forth, right? Okay, back and forth. Can you do it without moving your jaw? And this was a huge problem for him. His tongue and his jaw movements were not differentiated. They were moving together. And so I had him look in the mirror. I had him put his finger on his chin so he could feel it moving as his tongue was moving. And we practiced moving his tongue separately from his jaw. So we did up and down, side to side, just to start moving it, right? And then we did in and out. So sticking your tongue all the way out and then pulling it all the way back in. The first couple, it did not move very much at all. But as he started to play with it with no pressure, right? Because whenever I started talking about the R, he would kind of freeze up because he knew he couldn't do it. But he could do this, right? This was easy. So moving the tongue in and out. And I noticed he was getting it farther and farther back. So we did this for a little while. And I said, okay, now on this next one, when you get to the back, I want you to freeze all the way back there. And then we're going to try the R. And it was much, much better. Not there yet, but much better. So I can see with this friend, if we continue to work on moving his tongue independently of his jaw, we can get him to the right position so that he can try the sound. Okay, so that's what I mean by oral motor exercises. I know there's another one I've heard that's like painting. Imagine painting the top of the roof of your mouth with your tongue, like it's a paintbrush. And so you're going to paint from the front to the back. Again, we're using that to move the tongue back. And then once it's back there, let's say an R, right? We're not just painting the roof of the mouth for the sake of strengthening the tongue. The tongue is strong. It's fine. It doesn't need to be strengthened. What we need is awareness of where it is in the mouth and how do we move it into the spot that we need it to be. All right. So that's oral motor exercises. Number 10 is similar but different. This is the tongue bowl. All right. So this is another type of oral motor exercise, but if you can get it, then you can actually shape it into an R. So I think everybody probably is aware of the tongue taco, which is where you fold the sides of the tongue up so that your tongue looks like a taco. It's one of those things that supposedly some people can do and some can't. I don't know if there's any validity to that. But imagine folding the tongue into a taco. And then imagine holding that taco shape and then pulling the tongue tip up or curling it in. Curling it in is a better word. So that the tongue actually makes a bowl. The sides are higher, the front is higher, the middle is lower. Okay? That is a movement that you can do with the tongue forward, kind of sticking out so that you can see it in a mirror. And it's fun because the kids are like, oh, can I do that? It's a challenge, right? It's just a fun challenge. But if you can get a child to do the tongue bowl, and then you can pull that back into the mouth, to the back of the mouth. Well, what we're doing then is we have the sides of the tongue are up, right? So they can stabilize against those upper teeth. And then we're curling the tongue tip back. That's our beautiful retroflex star, right? So if we can get the tongue bowl and pull it back, sometimes we can get an R out of that. All right? Just another tool in our toolbox. All right. We're doing great. We're up to number 11. Number 11 is square lips. So when a child is making an R sound, we don't want their lips to be all the way rounded because then it's right? We're getting the W kind of sound in there. We don't want them to be all the way into an E, all the way spread out because it's harder to get that tension. What we want is halfway in between. So the lips are sticking out a little, but they're not closed down all the way to an ooh. And so what I like to call this, what my friend Laura likes to call this, and that's where I got this from, is square lips. Because if you look in a mirror, it kind of makes your lips look like a square. It is the same lip posture that we use for the SH sound, shh. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about, get out a mirror or turn on the camera on your phone and make the SH sound and look at the position of your lips. They're protruding a little, but they're not closed down all the way to an ooh, and it's kind of square shaped. So I call this square lips. If you can get them to make that lip position, it does a couple of things. It pulls the lips away so that they're not tempted to do the ooh sound. And it also requires an amount of tension to keep your lips like that. And sometimes that tension translates to tension in the tongue as well. They're tightening everything kind of all together, and it tightens the tongue, which makes it easier to make the R sound. So number 11 strategy is square lips, but I like to pair that with these other strategies, once I get the tongue kind of in the right position, if we can shape into square lips, that often shapes the sound into a more clear R sound. Okay, so feel free to mix and match. Enjoy these. Okay, number 12 then is to see if there's a context in which the child can already make the R sound. A lot of times there's already one word or one context where they do make a better R than other R's. And I will not say that there is any particular pattern to this, because I've had kids that have nice sounding R's on a lot of different words. Sometimes it's at the beginning. Sometimes it's a vocalic R. But ones that are working well for me right now, the TR and DR for some reason seems to, I think it's because it kind of gets that mid-tongue tension. But if you say like try or dry or draw, sometimes those will get a good R on there. The other one that's oddly working well for me right now is garga, which is a totally made up word. So it would be like Garga. But something about the G's kind of pulls the tongue back, and then garga. And I don't know, they get a good R in there sometimes. So what I would recommend is, number one, just listen to them talk and see if you hear any that you go, oh, that one actually sounded better. And or just run them through a list of R words and just start to write down which ones sound better. Because a lot of times what you can do is say, okay, so we're better at, like AR sounds, R, or we're better at or whatever it is that you realize. Oh, pyramid is another one that weirdly works for kids. Anyway, sorry. You find what they can do. You have them practice that successful one over and over again while they are feeling what their mouth is doing. Oh, where's your tongue right now when you say that? Let's think about it. Where are the sides of your tongue? Where is the tip of your tongue? And you help them become aware of how they are naturally producing that R sound. And then you very, very slowly expand that into similar contexts and similar R's until they can do it more interchangeably. Okay, so that's number 12. Number 13. Okay, so now I'm at the last three are like, if you have tried everything else and you really need we got to just try a different route. Okay. So number 13 is auditory discrimination. And I didn't put this one first because I don't think that every child needs to be able to hear the difference between the R and the W in order to get the good sound, especially because the whole point of the first half of these strategies was just to trick the brain into doing it, right? But if you've been trying and you're really not making progress, take a break from production and do auditory discrimination. So this is where you give them two words, one that has the R and one that has the replacement sound. So for example, wing and ring, they're exactly the same except that one has the R and one has the W. So you show them a picture of a wing, you show them a picture of a ring. They're both in front of them. You say, okay, I'm going to say one of these words. I want you to point to the one I say, ring. And then see if they can point to the right one. So you're basically training their ear at that point to hear the difference. And if we do that for a while and then come back to production, they may be more likely to hear when they are doing it correctly or incorrectly. Okay, so that's more of a phonology approach, but sometimes it helps. So again, tools in the toolbox. All right, number 14 then, there are at least a couple, probably more than a couple, honestly, let's be honest, devices. Pieces of hardware that you can purchase that will help a child put their tongue in the right position for this sound. Okay. There is one called Speech Buddies. That's the one that I've tried, and it is a stick and it's got a rubber tip. I believe the rubber tip is kind of like a spiral, like a curly cue. And then you kind of like curl your tongue up into it. I don't remember exactly. It's been a while since I used it. But they kind of like use this device to get their tongue in the right position. And then you take the device out and they say the R. So I know that's one. There's one that has like bite wings and a rubber band, like a orthodontic rubber band across the middle. And they pull the rubber band with their tongue to get that up and back kind of thing. I've seen some at like the ASHA conference where there seems to be some sort of like an actual screen. So you put this thing in their mouth and then they can like get biofeedback on whether they're getting it in the right position. I don't know. I'm not going to give you any specific advice on these because I don't think that, I don't have the experience And I don't think you need these, okay? If you really, really have a tough R and you want to try something like this, by all means, go for it. I want you to know they exist, but I don't want this to be your end all be all, because I think there are other ways to get this first. And then that would be kind of more of a last resort. Although these device companies are probably going to come back and tell me otherwise. But anyway, that's an option. Okay. My 15th strategy, my very last one, is to take a break. And this may sound counterproductive because we're talking about trying to fix this sound, but I cannot tell you how many times I have been working on a sound, working. We're not making progress. We're not making progress. And I'm so frustrated. And then they go away for summer break or winter break and they come back and oh my God, they've got it. And sometimes it's so frustrating because I'm like, I worked so hard on that and you did it over summer break on your own. But it's because sometimes the brain needs a break. When they are trying so hard to say a sound a certain way, it's almost like their brain gets stuck. And so sometimes we just need to give it a break and come back to it fresh after a few weeks. So if you've been working on this R and they're getting frustrated and you're getting frustrated, please stop because you're not helping anyone. If they are so frustrated that they don't like coming to speech, they're not willing to work on it, then we are doing more harm than good. So if you have other skills you can work on, awesome, do it. Work on some other skills. If that's the only thing they have to work on, see if the team would be okay with you taking a break for a number of weeks and with a scheduled return date, right? You're not just dropping them. You're saying, okay, we're going to take this break and then we're going to come back. If those are not options, you could do a break and work on auditory discrimination for a while, where you're not asking them to say it at all. You could work on something, kind of related, maybe like some reading tasks that contain the sound, but you're not asking them to produce it. I don't know. I don't know what the option would be there, but giving them a break, giving them permission to not think about this, not work on it, hey, you just say your art the way you want to say it, reduces that stress, reduces the pressure, so that when you come back to it, their brain is more ready. All right. So if you tried all these 14 strategies and nothing's working, give it a break. All right. That one ended up being longer than I thought it was. That was a lot of strategies though, but hopefully that helps you. I'm not trying to make you feel overwhelmed. I'm trying to give you tools in your toolbox. Obviously, you don't need to try every strategy with every client, but if you know that there are strategies you can try, then that makes you feel more empowered, and it helps our clients too, especially if we can teach them or explain to them that this is a process. We're going to try a whole bunch of different things. They're not all going to work. Tell them, hey, tell me if a strategy feels good or if you really hate it. I had this one kid, oh, sweet baby. They're all my sweet babies. They're not babies at all. But when I saw him this week, I pulled him and the first thing he said when he came out of the room is he goes, I'm not doing that silly L thing anymore. And I said, okay, you're not doing it. We will not do it. Because just like pushing it when they're too frustrated, if he doesn't want that strategy to work, it's not going to work. He thought tapping the L sound and pulling it back was silly. And you know why? Because he can't do it. He cannot get his tongue all the way to the back. So yeah, nope, that strategy didn't work. Moving on. Okay. So tell them to tell you which ones they like, which ones they don't like. And you just keep trying and then come back to a strategy later. Because maybe once we did these other things, now it makes more sense. Lots of different options. Don't get too hung up on feeling like you have to get it the first try or feeling like it has to get perfect. It's just we're maintaining a mindset of curiosity. I'm curious if this would work. I'm curious what sound will happen if we make this thing happen, right? Just be curious. All right. Like I said, don't forget to subscribe. We got some fun stuff coming up next week that I think you guys are really going to enjoy. So you don't want to miss that. And if you would like to leave a review, I would love that because that'll help us spread the word about the podcast. And that'll help motivate me to keep producing these amazing episodes for you guys so that you have the tools you need to support the clients and the kids in your life that need this kind of support. All right. Bye for now. We'll see you on the next episode of the Speech and Language Kids podcast.